Welcome to the McDonald Homecare podcast series, episode 1. Well, hello everyone, I'm Alex, and a warm welcome to the very first McDonald Homecare podcast. If you've happened upon this entirely by accident, it's probably worth letting you know that McDonald Homecare is a care provider based in Petersfield in Hampshire that specialises in live-in care and covers the Hampshire, Surrey and Sussex area. So this series of podcasts is really about giving people, and I should say not just people that fall in the catchment I've just mentioned, but people generally, a feel for what live-in care is about, and also a broader discussion of care options and helping people who are faced with making care decisions, perhaps for an elderly relative, possibly for the first time, giving them a way to navigate their way through some of that. So without further ado, hello Leigh, I'll get out of the way for a minute and let you introduce yourself.
Oh, thanks, Alex. Yes, my name is Leigh McDonald, the director, founder of McDonald Homecare, my wife and I. We're based in Petersfield, as Alex has said. We've been living here as a family for the last sort of 8 years. The company was founded in 2018, and we've been providing local residents with live-in care as a sort of a preferred option, really, to stay living at home.
That's great. And it's probably worth us briefly explaining how we know each other. So I met you when I was running a domiciliary care agency in southeast London, and we were getting an increasing number of requests for live-in care, but wanted to know how to do it well, really, before jumping in. So that was back, I think, when you were just starting out with McDonald Homecare, and you came and spent a few days with us to show us the ropes. Thankfully, we weren't on a competing patch. I think the thing for me that was immediately clear is how live-in care is a very different kettle of fish to domiciliary care. And just because you're a care agency that can do that domiciliary visiting care well, so the 45, 60-minute calls, that doesn't automatically mean that you're going to be able to jump straight in and do live-in care well. It's a different set of expectations, different profile of care worker, isn't it?
Yeah, massively. And my career was based around supporting a large national provider who predominantly provided the visiting care element very, very well. However, when the businesses wanted to get involved in live-in care, they sort of try to fit it all into one box, and it's a completely different beast, a completely different sort of operational sort of setup, and especially more than anything about the recruitment of the live-in care workers who are able to be able to sort of do the job, have a lifestyle, have a commitment, have a different level of integrity and life experiences and maturity for this particular job. So that was definitely an eye-opener, and especially for the businesses that I was able to consult and really help them to navigate through the complexities of the service.
And I think that was one of the biggest things for us is it is a completely different recruitment market, and finding really good people for domiciliary care is very different to live-in care. So what do you think one of the biggest myths about live-in care is that people have got a preconceived idea of it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think from my own experiences and many conversations with clients or families, or even just friends really about the business, is that the cost element. They would automatically assume, because it's one-to-one care in the person's home, that the costs will be astronomical. And that could be based upon just the understanding that the visiting care, could be charged between £20 and £30 per hour. Therefore, they look at that as a 24-hour package of care. And so, the costs associated in people's minds are extortionate. So that's not the reality of live-in care or the costs involved. So people would naturally default to a care home, let's per se, because they may see that as being a cheaper option or more viable option, but that's not the case. On par, a live-in care service is very much equal costs to a good care home. Some of the more exclusive care homes, live-in care is a lot lot more cost effective to that. So, the illusion about living care and having that one-to-one care and the costs involved, that's probably the biggest myth, Alex, I've come across.
Yes, I can see that, because when you sort of start to get to 3, maybe 4 visits a day, then really the costs are quite similar to live-in care, but you've got someone there all the time, and in terms of maintaining a routine that you like and getting up where you want, you're not around the fixed schedule of visiting care in that same way, because the person's there. And I think the other thing probably worth mentioning is around the cost effectiveness for couples. So if you have to have two care home places, for instance, if a couple wants to stay together, then living care can be more cost effective, can't it?
Oh, massively. I mean, this is where it's unrivaled, really, in regards to its costs, because, like you said, there's the emotional element of couples not wanting to be separated at such a crucial stage of their life and their marriage. But also, as you rightfully said, if someone is going to go into a care home, or a couple, then they're going to need to pay twice. Whereas live-in care, there will be additional cost to what it would look like for a single person needing care in their own home, but it's not a massive jump from that sort of single layer sort of fee to providing care for a couple, because the one-to-one care and companionship that live-in care provides, when it's a couple, obviously, yes, the person will be just cooking meals, but cooking for 3 instead of that single person and the carer, tidying the house, arranging sort of the household management, things that you do not need an extra carer or pay double for. So massive cost savings in regards to couples.
Great. So just to sort of rewind slightly, it's probably good for people to understand a little bit more about your background and what brought you to where you are now, and what was your sort of introduction to care? Where has it all come from?
Well, I mean, it seems that care has been part of my life and my whole career journey from the very beginning, really. So born in England, English family through and through. However, we immigrated to New Zealand when I was quite young. After schooling, I found this natural sort of tendency to be part of care and studied nursing. Eventually didn't go into the whole area of nursing. However, after my studies, I was sort of supporting young adults with profound intellectual, physical disabilities. And I was really there for 13 years. This is in Wellington, New Zealand now. And I really grew up in care, and I really became who I am today because of my experiences with that place and the relationships with the residents there, the staff, the management, the family, and everything, really. And sort of from hands-on care back then to be sort of the assistant manager of the organisation when I left to come over to the UK, and then really get involved in living care since 2012, where I've been sort of managing sort of high-level businesses, as I said earlier, on a national scale, on the recruitment, the management, the coordination, the consultancy, on every level there is really. I've sort of really been working with the area of living care for the last 8 years. And obviously, most recently, decided to take the step of faith and venture out onto our own. It's always been a dream and a desire to do this, so it just feels right. And so we're almost 2 years into the business now, and slowly but surely building a really good local reputation. I think it's worth just adding quickly as well. In 2001, I came over to the UK and spent a year over here. And actually in that time, I was still in hands-on sort of care work in my career. And I was a living carer over here. And I think it was only for a very short period of time, but what I look back on now, it's set me up amazingly to be able to support staff, to recruit the right staff, to have the empathy and the understanding that what the carers go through, so finding the right carers, but also what the clients go through as well. So it's funny to look back on that time and think, oh, it's just a holiday job, but actually it's proven to be a massive asset in what I'm doing now.
And I think that's one of the things that I took away from when you came to work with us for that couple of days, is the organisation, whichever organisation that is, really needs to support the live-in care worker as much as that live-in care worker supports the client. They've got to be there. They've got to be their backup, and just have the time to meet their needs as well.
Yeah, definitely. As we said earlier, it's not the same as employing a local carer who actually sort of does so many hours per day during the week, but gets to go home at the end of that shift. Living care by nature, they're living in, and therefore they're immersed in that person's world and their care package and their home and their family, really. And they do not go home at the end of the day. They're there for long periods of time. And therefore the recruitment and the support of that living care worker is essential.
So what was it that made you decide to focus on living care for McDonald Homecare as opposed to any other type of care? I mean, there's probably some things that you've touched on in terms of your experiences actually doing the job yourself. Are there other elements that sort of made you think this is the right area of care for me and where I want to start?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously working for many years in the sector has given me a great understanding, experience, and heart for the job, really. So it's been a natural progression to start the business in regards to living care. It just feels a good fit for us. I think on a personal journey, I've had family members that have been in care homes and those who've received care at home through living care. So just seeing the distinction between those two services and the impact that they can have. So that's definitely been one of the other reasons for us going down this road of living care. And I think more than anything, Alex, for me, you've got to believe in what you're doing. There's got to be an inherent passion and desire to do what you really want to do and have a conviction behind it. And therefore, just knowing the connection that we can provide between the clients, families, and the care workers, and how living care by nature is unrivaled in that one-to-one caring companionship. That really is the key element. This is not just a business or let's try and see sort of business or company. I've seen this work over and over and over again, and how the impact on those lives, the person who's receiving care, the family that's receiving the care, how it's changing their lives, but also when you connect the right carers to the client and the family, what career they have, what value they're having, and the reward that they are feeling as a carer themselves. So, I think that's the key elements to me, and the reasons why living care is the way for us as a business anyway to go forward.
And that's probably one of the big things, isn't it, that you've touched on there, is around the family needing to be supported as well, and they're so intimately involved in helping, elderly parents or relatives make those decisions about care. And I guess sometimes that's quite challenging. There can be some reluctance to accept care. That's it's not uncommon to see that. How do you sort of get around that?
Well, I mean, the majority of the time we will always be contacted by the family. It's not often the client themselves is either wanting, to be fair, to have someone living with them, or acknowledge that actually they even need care to that level. So often we'll have the families who, probably by this stage, if they're serious about living care and not just a genuine inquiry, that they are quite serious about this, then they've often been on their own journey as a family. And that is the family really taking the brunt of the emotional, the physical burdens of their family and their elderly relatives living by themselves, and the safety elements that come with it. So a lot of times where the families are taking, a living maybe with their elderly relatives, or doing their best to coordinate between their own lives, and one of the biggest heartfelt things is that the conversations I often have with families is their relationships change with their parents, and therefore, instead of being a daughter or a son or a niece or a nephew or whatever it may be, they've now become a main caregiver. And I think that when it's got to that stage, it really can have a detrimental impact on everyone, to be fair. So I think the biggest things for us to do is to acknowledge that and to alleviate that through living care. And I think once that's done, it really stabilizes and recalibrates those relationships, and everyone can see almost the instant benefits. So the family now can take that step back, and become and have those normal sort of family relationships again, but also get back to their normal lives and relieve that burden. And the clients themselves, adapt to having that person in their home. Yes, it's not a family member, but they actually see that they're a professional and that their family's relationships are restored. And so that's often the natural way that things sort of work out, really, and the tax that we take to really take the pressure off the client, even acknowledging they need care, but sometimes it's acknowledging that actually their family need them to have care.
Yes, I think from my experience, you sort of tended to see people fall into one of two camps when they got to that stage where they really needed some professional support with care, and they'd been maybe delivering the care and managing the household and all of the things that go with that. Is that you had a section of people that wanted to just hand that responsibility over, but you had another group that were much more engaged in the care on a day-to-day basis and wanted to maintain that to some degree. They couldn't continue as they were, particularly if they've got a young family or they've got a job to do, and it's a lot to take on. But they still wanted to be involved. And I think in terms of something that we haven't discussed yet is McDonald Homecare as an introductory agency is giving people that sense of control over the care and the choice. So it's probably worth expanding on the introductory element a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a fundamental part of why we started the business as an introductory service. So for the majority of my career, I've always worked under sort of the regulated care. That's both in New Zealand and the UK, and within the living care sector here as well for many years. So I completely have a respect and a very detailed understanding of the regulated care. However, the introductory service it's different, but also without compromising on the compliance side of things. So it's different in that it is more centered around the introducing of the right carers, and not just introducing sort of anyone that's on the books, if that makes sense. So we have a very sort of boutique sort of process where actually the client and the family are involved in the whole introduction or even in the whole recruitment process, which is completely different. So instead of the client having Mary, example, turn up at the door at 12 o'clock on Tuesday, in that month, because that's what's been assigned by the business, they have been introduced to that care from the very start. So there's a real sense that everyone's part of that, which I think gives that respect and that dignity to the client and the family as well. It relieves a lot of initial pressures, really. And from a compliance point of view, I'm not by nature this compliance-orientated person, that really, and what I mean by that is that, as I said, I have respect for that, but I don't believe compliance is tick box orientated. There's so much that what happens now in the care sector that's very tick box, that's very regimented, that's very paperwork heavy, and therefore the recruitment of the carers, the introduction, the coordination, the support, the management of all of the service gets drained. And so being able to provide an introductory service where all those other sort of administrative and tick box sort of exercises are minimized completely, it just allows for a greater relationship management to happen.
Yeah, I think there's always that danger is that that compliance side can take away from the human element because people are so conscious of it. And I guess it's important to say that unregulated doesn't mean untrained staff. It doesn't mean uncompliant. Everyone who provides care in whatever capacity still has that duty of care, regardless of whether they're with a registered provider or not. I mean, and we quite often see, don't we, ex-nurses who are now delivering live-in care, and they've got such a breadth and depth of experience that they're bringing to that, but they're just choosing to do that on their own terms rather than work through an agency.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, living care by its nature, it's a completely different person we're looking at. So, we're talking about people who are more mature through life experiences. Like you said, they may have been previous nurses or in the healthcare sector, or, you know, other sort of sectors in general, where they've had a wealth of experience to care for other people, mothers, grandmothers, just people that, when you're introducing a living care worker into somebody's life, fundamentally that person needs to have not only the heart to care, but the ability to care, to run this person's house, to oversee relationships with family, other health professionals, make appointments. It's not this type of person you won't find, or you cannot train them in the classroom. It's impossible to. It's got to be part of who they are and part of their own journey of life for them to actually be a good living care worker. And getting back to a point of the introductory services, what it allows the family and the client to have a relationship with that carer, apart from the actual company. So, and I think that's so important. I've seen the benefits of that over and over again, that they can generally have a relationship with that carer, that a lot of the boundaries or the barriers are down, and therefore, the way that they communicate, the way that person is treated within the home, just enhances the whole care service for the person who's receiving that.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, the background that I came from, that our view was always that you can't train for compassion, you can't train for empathy, but you can train people who have that fundamentally in the skill of caring, and it is skilled, and that's not recognised often enough, I don't think. And it's been an interesting and challenging few months for the health and social care sector. So what have you seen happening in the living care sector as a result of COVID-19? What's your impression of what's going on?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's really enhanced the need or the desire for people to stay living in their own homes more than anything. And that's not just about living care. It's just people wanting to stay safe and isolated in their own home. I mean, again, by nature, living care just allows that to happen. Living care, when you've got that living care service, that living care worker in place, they are almost self-isolating. There's not multiple different carers coming every day or different days. So it minimizes the risk. It minimizes all the potential to cross-contaminate and so on. So, it's been a massive highlight of what care in the home should look like, and for the future will look like, really. And there's been even surveys done about how people would naturally default to a care home for themselves in the future or for a loved one. And that's changed massively because of the unfortunate and horrible situation that's gone on with the amount of deaths.
Yeah, it does seem like it's put living care on the map in a much bigger way than before, and that's absolutely not a quality. A comment on the quality of care homes or the hard work that those staff are doing, but it's just as you've described. It's being at home is naturally the safest environment. In the months that we've had.
Yeah, and look, if I can just also add, that I think with everyone's experience, even in our own family, that we have dear friends who are in care homes locally, and it's just the sense that you cannot go and visit, or you haven't been able to, up to this stage, really have that quality time with that person. Whereas being at home allows for that bubble, allows for those relationships to continue as normal as possible in a very unnormal, unnatural situation.
Yeah, that's really true. And I think there's some aspects of living care that we can dive into a little bit deeper as we carry on with this series of podcasts. So looking at some of the benefits and bringing that to life through some case studies, perhaps, of people who have experienced living care or gone through the process of getting to living care, perhaps from a care home back home or visiting care. It's quite common. So if people want to find out more about living care in the meantime, how should they do it, Leigh?
Well, I mean, in regards to living care in general, then, the easiest way is to go online and search for local providers in your area. Obviously, if it's around our area, then it would be lovely to talk to people and to be able to talk in person to give people a better understanding of their options, really. So, for us, it would be going via our website, finding our details on there, whether email or by phone, and just really having that really informal chat.
That's good. So we should probably give people the web address. So it's www.mcdonaldhomecare.co.uk, and your email is leigh@mcdonaldhomecare.co.uk, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And a lot of people talk about whether it's the Irish or the Scottish McDonald's. So it's apparently the Irish. I haven't done my family tree as much, but we believe there's the Irish there. So it's just MC. So McDonald, McDonald Homecare.
Okay, that's great. And people can also find you on Facebook as well. And there's quite a few useful posts on there to support people with, navigating care decisions and that sort of thing. So if you're on Facebook, worth looking it up and giving it a like to follow some of the posts that go on there. And phone number, Leigh, is?
So you can contact us, myself on mobile, which is 075 4945 1893. That's to get hold of me personally, or the business number is 01730 624 070.
So that's going to be predominantly for people who are in the Petersfield area or Hampshire, Surrey, Sussex area. So as a local to that area, then, just to sign off on this first podcast, what is your favourite place in Hampshire then?
Look, Hampshire's a beautiful county. There's no regards, and we're positioned as well. Actually, we're positioned East Hampshire, so we're on the border of West Sussex and Surrey, which again, beautiful counties to live in. But I think anyone who's local to where we are in Petersfield, especially, we have the gem of the Heath down here with the lake, which is just a beautiful place. Spent many a time, a day, a week down the Heath with the family. With my wife and children. So, that's definitely a go-to spot. So I'm sure that rings true to many people if they're listening there around this area.
That's great. Well, thank you very much, Leigh. And thank you to everyone who's tuned in to listen. We'll be back in probably a couple of weeks' time with a follow-up podcast, diving a little deeper, as I said, into some of the subtleties of live-in care. And we look forward to speaking to you then, Leigh.
Brilliant. Thanks, Alex.